Welcome back, everyone, and a special welcome if this is your first time here. Glad to have you with us. Make sure you subscribe and like the episode if you enjoy what you hear. All right, so today we're taking a look at, what can only be described as the look beneath the clouds. There's this. Feeling like something's not quite right. With the sky, we're going to explore this through a bunch of stories. They all seem separate at first, but they all have ordinary people who encounter these unexplainable things. What connects these stories, and what might they reveal about the world around us?
It's how unsettling these stories are that draws us in. Each one by itself is like a disturbing break from reality. Taken together, they kind of feel like cracks in the foundation of our everyday world.
Okay, so let's start with this story. It takes place in a familiar setting, right? A man is at a bar with friends. Everything seems normal until he takes a sip from his drink, and there's this fresh blood stain on the rim of the glass. But his friends, they don't even react. Their faces are just blank.
The blood stain. It's like a symbol of violence and disruption. Right in the middle of this ordinary setting, this juxtaposition of the mundane and the macabre, that's a recurring theme we say. It creates this unease, a feeling that something is off, even when you're somewhere familiar.
Yeah, and his friends just not reacting at all.
Yeah.
It adds another layer of weirdness.
Right.
Their blank stares. It's like they're detached. Indifferent to this disturbing thing that just appeared.
Like they're aware of something that he's not.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're just choosing to ignore it.
Ignoring warnings. Yeah, we see that a lot in these stories. People get clear signs that something's wrong.
Right.
But they dismiss them. And it doesn't end well.
It can have terrible consequences.
Like in that story.
Yeah.
About the tree. The one that children are warned not to touch.
Oh, yeah.
Those who ignore the warnings, they end up twisted and broken. Like some unseen force got to them.
The tree image, it's so powerful. Nature's power, indifferent to human suffering, and like a warning about messing with forces we don't understand.
The unknown, ancient and dangerous. Okay, then there's this story about this wealthy kid who uses a seashell to paralyze his classmates. Makes them do all these awful things. It's about power. Manipulation and
that darkness that can hide underneath innocence.
Exactly.
This one shows how vulnerable children are, how innocence can be used, and how cruel people can be, even when you don't expect it.
You'd never think a seashell could be scary.
Right.
But it becomes this tool of control.
A symbol of power.
And then you've got the story of the man who makes fun of his friend's face. His friend's face is disfigured. And then he ends up with the same disfigurement.
Like the universe is punishing him.
Yeah, for being cruel.
It's karma. The idea that your actions have consequences, the universe balances things out, even if it means making someone suffer. Who made others suffer?
It's chilling.
It is.
It makes you think about what you say.
Right.
Words have power.
Yeah, and the pain you cause can come back to haunt you.
So all of these stories, they have their own unique details.
Yeah.
But they all share this feeling of dread. Like reality is unstable.
Like the ground is shifting beneath you.
Exactly.
It's a feeling you see more and more these days. Like a collective unease.
Right,
Give me these stories. Are reflecting our own anxieties.
Our fears about the future.
The things we can't control.
Yeah, and that fear often comes with visual or auditory distortions. Like the woman who sees a singer on stage, but instead of a face, it's just a black void.
Or the man who hears his dead father's voice on the phone.
It's like our perception of reality is breaking down.
The lines are blurring between real and not real.
Makes you question your own senses.
Your sanity, even.
And it's not just individuals. There's that story about the family. Terrorized by all these weird things in their house. Objects disappearing. A burning sensation on someone's foot. A shadow figure in a kid's room.
Like the house itself is haunted.
Right.
A classic horror trope.
But it makes you think about the safety of your own home. What if even in our most private spaces, we're not safe from the unknown? So we see this pattern emerging. Ordinary people, familiar settings. Then bam, something unsettling happens, unexplainable.
And a lot of times, there are warnings.
Signs that something's off.
But they're ignored or dismissed.
Maybe these stories are warnings themselves.
Trying to tell us something.
Urging us to pay attention.
Could be more aware.
Of those subtle shifts in our reality.
To acknowledge that darkness can be lurking just beneath the surface of our lives.
This idea of a warning, a message we don't understand, it gets even bigger. In the story of the scientist, he discovers these giant planet-consuming creatures moving across the galaxy, coming straight for Earth.
Wow.
Talk about a primal fear.
Annihilation.
By forces we can't even comprehend.
We're so vulnerable.
Insignificant compared to the universe.
It really puts things in perspective.
But there's something compelling about these stories, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
They make you question things.
Make you look closer.
At the shadows.
At the sky.
At the world around you. Before we go on with these unsettling stories, we want to remind you to subscribe to our channel and give this episode a like if you're enjoying it.
We're going to go even deeper into what these encounters mean. Psychologically, philosophically. What do they tell us about our fears, our anxieties, and what are they trying to tell us about the world we live in? Stay with us. It's like they're whispers in the dark, these stories, hinting at something huge and unsettling. Right there, but we just can't see it.
Yeah. You get this feeling something's off. This creeping dread, it's in a lot of these stories. Like the one about the guy who finds his dog replaced by this thing.
Oh yeah, pure primal fear right there. The familiar becoming something totally alien.
We use our senses, right, to figure out the world, what's safe, what's not. But what happens when those senses lie to you? When you can't even trust your own dog?
And it's not just any betrayal. It's something you depend on, something that's supposed to protect you. Becomes the source of fear.
Imagine it. Waking up, your dog's there, but it's wrong. This grotesque thing. The fur's all oily, and the growl, it's like a hum that vibrates the whole room.
The dog's supposed to be loyalty, protection. Suddenly it's a sign of something breaking in, not just into your house, but into your safe space, your mind.
And the worst part? It vanishes. No trace, except this awful smell and that feeling like something's deeply wrong. He finds his real dog, fine, but how do you go back to normal after that? How do you trust what you see, what you hear?
It makes you wonder, what if what we call real is just a thin layer, a trick, and underneath there's something monstrous waiting?
That's a thought. And then there's the stories about possession. Like something takes over your body, your mind. Like that woman, she feels his presence. It makes her create amazing art. But
it makes you think about where creativity comes from. Is it all in our heads, or can something else influence it, even control it? What if, to be truly great, you have to give up part of yourself to something bigger?
She feels it, literally in her hands, guiding her as she paints. Her work becomes famous. But the more powerful this presence gets, the less she feels like herself. It's like she's fading away, blending with whatever's controlling her.
A dark kind of deal.
Yeah.
Artistic brilliance, but you lose yourself. A vessel for something beautiful and horrifying both at once.
And the price isn't always just personal. Think about that scientist. Discovers these creatures, wiping out planets, heading right for Earth, tries to warn everyone, but no one believes him.
That's a whole other level of fear. We're just tiny things in this giant universe, at the mercy of forces we can't even imagine. What if our whole existence is just temporary?
And he's all alone with this knowledge. The ultimate burden, seeing a truth no one else can, and being powerless to stop it.
Chilling. Sometimes the worst truths are the ones we're not ready for, the ones that shake our whole understanding of how things work.
But even with that dread, there's a glimmer of hope. He keeps observing, keeps trying to understand, even knowing what's coming, the human spirit, right? We have to make sense of things, even the unimaginable.
That's what hooks us on these stories, I think. They make us face our deepest fears, the uncertainty, the potential for chaos. But they also show our strength, our curiosity, our drive to understand, even when it's scary.
Yeah, even when everything feels like it's falling apart, there's something powerful in seeking knowledge, in sharing these stories, in facing the darkness together.
Let's look at a story that hits closer to home, about blurring the lines between life and death, the past coming back in ways we don't expect. This guy gets a phone call, but the number hasn't been in service for years.
And the voice on the other end? He knows it. It's his father, who died over a decade ago. At first, he thinks it's a prank, some cruel joke. But as they talk, he starts to doubt. The voice knows things, private things, memories they shared, things only his father could have known.
Sends chills down your spine. The idea that death isn't the end, that they can reach out somehow. But it makes you wonder about identity, too. What if technology can be used in ways we haven't even figured out yet?
Is it really him coming back from beyond? Or is it something else, using his voice, his memories? Something that knows his deepest secrets?
We don't get a clear answer. Makes you think about death, what comes after. Is it comforting to think our loved ones can still talk to us? Or is it terrifying, thinking something else might be using their voice, toying with our grief?
That uncertainty, that feeling of reality bending, it's in so many of these stories. Makes them so unsettling, so hard to shake off. They challenge what we think is possible, what we think we know about the world.
We have to question everything we see and hear. Our senses can lie. There might be more to the world than we can see, hidden just out of sight.
Right. So let's move on to a story that blends folklore, superstition, the unexplainable. This family, they're haunted by strange events, and it all revolves around a tree. A tree the kids aren't allowed to touch.
Ah, the forbidden tree.
Picture it, an old house, surrounded by woods, isolated, unsettling, and from the time they're little, the kids are warned, stay away from that tree. It's dangerous, evil, a place to be feared.
Passed down through generations, those warnings, heavy with fear and tradition. But of course, the kids get curious, drawn to the mystery, the danger, like it's hiding something they need to know.
And the more curious they get, the worse things get. One kid touches the tree, gets sick, toys vanish, weird sounds at night. The family tries to explain it away, coincidence, kids' imaginations. But deep down, they know something's wrong.
The tree becomes this focal point for their fear, a symbol of unseen forces closing in. Their safe world, their sense of order, it all starts to fall apart. They realize they're not in control.
And they pay the price for not listening. Things escalate. Fear and suspicion tear the family apart. The kid's innocence is gone, replaced by dread. The parents are helpless to protect them from something they don't understand.
A powerful lesson. Some things are better left alone. Those old warnings usually have a reason, and ignoring them can be devastating.
A lot of these stories feel like warnings, don't they? Whispered around campfires, passed down to keep us safe. Stories about the danger of going too far, of tempting fate, of looking too deep into the darkness that's always there, just beneath the surface.
Maybe it's how we deal with our anxieties, facing our fears in a safe way. By sharing these stories, by admitting the darkness exists, we admit our own vulnerability, our need for each other, our need to find meaning, even when the world feels chaotic and scary.
And that's what makes exploring terror and urban myths so fascinating. It's not just about the scares. It's about digging deeper into the shadows, into what makes us human. Our fear, our curiosity, our need to understand, even when things can't be explained.
Okay, let's shift gears. This story plays with how we perceive things, how our minds can trick us, how reality itself can become slippery. It's about a man who sees this old woman, and she looks exactly like someone from a news article he read, someone who died.
He's just going about his day in a store when he sees her. Just an ordinary old woman, but something about her is off. Familiar in a way that bothers him. He can't place it, and then it hits him. He saw her picture in a news story about a terrible accident, an accident that killed her just a few days ago.
Total head trip. Like, is he remembering wrong? Is his mind playing games? Or is it something more? Like the lines between life and death are blurring, the real and the imagined blending together.
He doesn't know what to think, starts to doubt his own sanity. Can he trust anything he sees? The experience shakes him up, makes him question everything. What's real, what's not? What if there's something else out there messing with his reality?
This distorted perception, it's all over these stories. Deep down, we worry about whether our own minds can be trusted. Can our senses lie to us? Are our memories real? What if everything we believe is built on something shaky?
What if what we see, what we hear, what we remember, what if it's all wrong? What if our minds are weaker than we think, easy to manipulate, influence, control by something we don't even know is there?
We have to be careful, acknowledge that our senses have limits, accept that maybe there's more to reality than we know. It's in the cracks, the things that don't add up, where we might catch a glimpse of something truly unsettling, something that shows us how fragile our reality really is.
These stories, it's like they're peeling back the layers, showing us there's something disturbing underneath. Let's look at one that gets really personal. It's about a man who finds out something terrible about his past, something that changes how he sees his whole family, his whole world.
Family secrets, they can be like a ticking time bomb, blow everything up. This story, it's about how a perfect childhood, maybe it wasn't so perfect after all.
The guy, he says he grew up loved, but kind of isolated. Him and his brother, their parents protected them, kept them away from the hard parts of life out in the country. But there was this shadow hanging over them, a mysterious tree. The kids were told never to go near it. Just whispers and fear, no explanation.
The tree, it's like that bloodstain or that seashell. A symbol of something off limits, something bad. Represents the things we don't know, the wildness, the things adults try to shield us from. But sometimes that protection, it comes with a price. We're kept safe, but also kept in the dark.
The guy, when he's a kid, he's fascinated by the tree, of course. One day, he hears his parents fighting about it. His mom's begging his dad to stay away. She's terrified. But he doesn't listen.
Classic stubborn dad, right. Doesn't want to admit the danger,
Yeah.
Wants to show he's tougher than nature, tougher than whatever's out there. But that kind of stubbornness, a lot of times it comes from fear, trying to control the things you don't get.
And it backfires big time. His dad goes to cut the tree down, gets hurt bad. And his little brother, he's killed. Something pulls him into the darkness. Their family's destroyed. The truth comes out. Ignoring the warnings, it costs them everything.
Tough lesson. Some things you don't mess with. Old warnings, they usually exist for a reason. And when you ignore them, you might not like what happens.
A lot of these stories make you think the past isn't really over and done with. Like it can reach out and grab you, haunt you, change your life without you even realizing it.
Yeah, like time isn't a straight line. It bends and twists. The past bleeds into the present. Like that story about the guy who's slowly replaced by his doppelganger, this copycat that starts taking over his life, his relationships, even his memories.
He notices little things at first. His reflection's not quite right. People act different around him. He starts forgetting things, important stuff, like someone's erasing him bit by bit.
That's a scary thought. Losing yourself,
Yeah.
Replaced by something that looks like you, sounds like you, but it's not you. Like your identity is fragile, something that can be taken, changed, controlled.
And in the end, there's nothing left of him. Everything's gone, his whole life stolen, just an empty shell.
It reminds me of the story about the young guy who finds out a dark secret about his grandfather, a secret that throws a shadow over his family's whole history. He has to face the truth about where he comes from.
He worships his grandpa, this tough, quiet guy, teaches him how to live off the land, respects their family's past. But as he gets older, he notices things. Weird rituals at night, hushed conversations, this underlying feeling that something's not right.
There's always something with the grandfathers, isn't there?
Right. So he starts digging and uncovers this awful truth. His grandpa made a deal with something ancient. It brought them good luck, money, but there was a price. A classic deal with the devil.
You always pay the piper eventually.
He's torn between his love for his family and the horror of what his grandpa did. His whole comfortable life, it was built on something dark. And he might be tied to it, to the consequences.
Heavy stuff. Shows you the past never really goes away. The choices we make, even the ones our ancestors made, they can have a ripple effect, shaping lives down the line.
All these stories we've talked about, these glimpses of terror and urban legends, they're not just for fun, right? They show us our deepest fears, what worries us about the world, the unknown, how fragile we are.
They make us rethink what we believe, show us the limits of what we know, remind us that there's more out there than we can imagine. We got to look closer, question what we think we know, be aware of the darkness, even when we think we're safe.
And that's it for this Look Beneath the Clouds. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a like if you enjoyed it. Until next time, keep your eyes open, but be careful what you see when you look too deep.